Hey, in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use AI to automatically categorize your leads based on industry. You can see on this landing page, I have an example form here, and the key input field that I've got here is obviously the business email. And this is important because we're going to be used the domain of this email to determine the industry with AI. So how are we going to do this? We're going to use something called a webhook, and then we're going to use a app called make.com. Now, make.com is completely no-code solution and allows you to connect bits and pieces together, different apps and platforms together to ultimately come up with a workflow which is going to help you out. And again, like I said, this is completely no code, so you can jump in and do this yourself. So the first thing you need to do is set up a make account. Now, the accounts do come free. However, depending on how much usage your website gets, how many leads are coming through, essentially you are going to have to pay around $10 a month for a paid subscription. Make is going to rely on using a webhook. Now, what is a webhook? A webhook is a way to communicate with other apps on the web. So, for example, going back to our example form here, when I submit my email and click generate now, usually what will happen on most B2B sites is that's either going to go direct to an email, which is going to land in someone's inbox, which is going to be checking those leads, or it's going to go directly into your CRM. Now, quite often, depending on your platform that you're using for your website, this might be WordPress, for example, this is just going to be a direct integration, something that was set up when the website was set up, and you probably haven't touched it since then. So a webhook is going to be another piece that kind of adds on to this. And the webhook is going to be something that fires when you click generate now and provides that information that's been entered into the fields to another service. In this case, it's going to be make.com. So to kind of further this example, say you were using WordPress for your business website. Here I have an example of how you would actually set that up. So on WordPress, there are many contact forms available. However, there is this one which I did find which had a free webhook plugin available. So contact form 7 is very powerful and popular. And you can see that also CF7 to webhook is also available as a free plugin. So if you do have WordPress on your site and you are looking to follow along, then you can install both these plugins, and then you should find that you have the settings available. So what you need to do is obviously set up a contact form first, and you can do that within the contact form settings. And you can see here, I have another example where I've just got email available in the form. There's also a tab after I've enabled that webhook plugin, and you can see that it's provided here webhook URL, and it's also provided the data that's being sent to the webhook. And you can see that the key piece of data here is the email. And this is going to be the actual piece of information that we're using to complete this AI categorization workflow. So when we have this set up, we can now move to make. In make, we have scenarios. Scenarios, like I said, are the no-code solutions which are available to connect pieces and apps together. It all starts with that webhook, like I mentioned. So what I'm going to do now is walk through how I'd actually go about setting this up. It obviously starts with that webhook. So to do that, you obviously need to create a new scenario, add a new module, and then you need to add a webhook. When you add a webhook, you can see that there is a few types available. Because I've already got the initial starting webhook, it doesn't show it here. However, it would be create a custom webhook, and that would be the first module that you wanted to add to your flow. When this is created, you can see that it provides the webhook link. Now, going back to that contact form settings, you can see that this is where you'd actually provide that URL. So this is a key kind of piece of information here that if you were using, a contact form like CF7, for example, like I said, potentially you have it connected to your CRM, or you have it connected to an email that gets sent directly to your inbox. Potentially you can keep that integration and keep this separate, keep the webhook component separate. However, the way that I'm going to show you today is actually connecting everything through the webhook, meaning that there's no other connection or no other integration that moves these leads to the next component. Instead, everything's going through that webhook, and Make is actually handling the email and handling the industry categorization. So I'll show you a bit later how that actually happens. But for now, we have that link. And what you'll also need to do is determine the data structure. Now, if you edit you can actually see the information required in the webhook, and you can see the data structure here as well, which is important as well. So you can see that in the data structure, this is the data that's going to be expected by the webhook that gets sent through. And this is what we saw going back to that contact form settings. That's the data here, data sent to the webhook. And you can see that the data that's important is email that's being sent through. And currently it's being set to URL. So this would actually need to be email in this case for it to work. Okay. So when you've actually confirmed that your form and the webhook have the same settings and are set up to the same specifications, you can actually test this. Now, how are you going to test this easily? You can obviously use the contact form itself. So for example, if you have this set up on your WordPress, then all you'd need to do is do a example test flow, an example lead form submission, or you can use another app to kind of send these webhooks much easier. And what I'm going to use is something called Postman. Now, Postman is another app, like I said, that will allow the testing of these webhooks. So what I would do is when I made a Postman account, I would set up a new post, and the post is the URL to the webhook. And posting in here, you obviously need the URL or, the email, essentially. Okay. So once you've done that, then what we're going to do is we're going to make a request. Now, where does a request go? What it needs to do is it needs to get the markdown of the website that you're testing. So say you have a customer, and that customer is from a internet service provider as a complete example. And in this example, it's going to be IINet. Okay. So obviously on IINet, they have their homepage here, and this is what the AI is going to be looking at, the content based on this homepage to determine the industry that your lead is coming from. So what we can actually do is we can take this example, we can put in the post, and this is going to generate the first step in the make flow. So what I can do is when I've actually added this module, I can right click on it and click run this module only. Okay. So if I click this and click run this module only, what it's going to be doing now is in this test environment, be waiting for that webhook. Okay. So you can see that here, and I've set the URL and I've set it to IINet, and I'm clicking send. When I've clicked send, you can see that it's been accepted, and you can see that it's come through here, and the URL is being passed into the application in make here. So I can now see that URL here. So what are we going to do with this URL? Like I said, we're going to use a HTTP request to get the content on this page. So we have the URL, but we actually need to get the content that's visible on this homepage to determine the basis of this content. Now, there's a free service that you can use, and it's called r.gina.ai/the URL. Okay. So what you do is if you actually go to this, and I'll show you right now, you can go to this, and then I can take this URL, go here, and then you can see slash, and then I literally just paste the URL after the AI slash. And if I click enter here, what it's going to do is load for a couple of seconds, and then it's going to give me the markdown or just the raw content of that page. And this is going to work with any website that you have. Now, this is awesome because now what we can do is we can take this content and we can feed it into the AI to determine the industry. So that's exactly what we're going to do. The next step is going to be determining the industry with OpenAI. So to get that going, obviously we need to add a module and add the OpenAI module. The next thing you need to do is add a connection to OpenAI. And if you click add, it will actually show you how to do that. So you just need the API key and organizational ID. All you need to do is follow the links to get those. You will need to connect a credit card to get an API key that's actually going to work. But we're going to use GPT-4o-mini, which came out relatively recently. However, this is going to be super, super cheap. Okay. So this is going to be really, really easy to use. And it's going to basically allow us to categorize these industries at a relatively low cost, which is exactly what we're looking to do today. When you're signed into the OpenAI platform, as you can see here, platform.openai, you can go to the API keys page here, and you can easily create a new secret key, which is going to then provide you with the API key that you obviously copy in as well. You also need that project, so you can see that I created a project here. And again, if you follow that link, you will get that organizational ID as well. We also need to create an assistant. Now, an assistant is, I guess, the role that is actually being created, which is going to be used to determine, again, that industry based on the content. So what we want to do is create an assistant, which is going to be highly tailored to that specific job. So to do that, we go into assistants in the playground, and we can create a new assistant called industry category. Now I've just created a pretty general instructions here. You can see that I've written you are an in and out operation bot designed as an industry categorizer that takes markdown and a predefined list of industries and replies in JSON format, which is just essentially code format with the most relevant industry selected. And you can see that again, I've selected the mini model because this is going to be both effective and cheap to use. And I've also selected JSON object as the response. And I'm making sure that the temperature is relatively low at around 0.1. We do want to keep this temperature low because the higher the temperature is, the more random the response is, and the more likely that the AI is going to do something completely random. So what you want is you want it to be relatively low so that it has a bit of creativity to understand what's going on, but it's not going to give you a completely random response, which is completely irrelevant to what we're looking to do. So once that's set up, we can actually use that in Make. So when it's connected, you'll be able to actually select that assistant here. And you can see that I've selected it here. And then we're going to keep the role as a user, and we're going to provide the message. Now the message is the markdown, which is the data, which is the markdown that we got from this Gina AI request, essentially this content here. Okay, so it's going to give this to the AI, all this text, it's going to pass it in. And the second thing it's going to do is also going to give the options for the available industries. Now you can see that I've got a big list here, and if you don't know how to format it correctly in JSON format, you can see that I've got the curly brace and the square bracket list here. What you can always do, and what I did in this case, is I found a big list of B2B industries. I didn't write all these. I just found a massive list, and I said, please provide this list in a JSON list format. And then I just copied it in, and that's all you need to do. But obviously you can change this list to be any industries that you want, and it will categorize based on that list. So depending on your business, depending on the type of leads that you get, you can change this to be relevant to the CRM or the way that you're currently running analytics. So once that's set up, and we have, again, we can set this just to be sure, keep the temperature set at 0.1, again, to be sure, and the JSON format. This is just overriding the settings that I already set. However, just keeps it clean, just make sure that it's going to work correctly. Now, the final piece is the response. So the response is going to be the result. And the result is obviously the industry. So let's put it all together now. Instead of right-clicking and clicking run this module only, what I'll do is I'll save it and then I'll click run once. And this means that the entire flow can now run. Okay, so going back to Postman, if I try this again and I click send, and then I quickly go back here, I can watch the entire flow happen. So what happened is I saw the URL come in. Next, I made the request to the Gina AI, and I got data back, which is all that markdown content. Next, it went into OpenAI, and we got a result, which is industry, which is ISPs, which is 100% correct, which is awesome. Next, it's simply a webhook response, and the response is just to return the result. What that means is when the hook sends that data, that URL data, the response coming back is going to be the industry. You can see that here. But what are you going to do with that information, right? How are you going to connect that to your CRM, to the email that gets sent to your team, etc., right? So this is where it comes in that it may be useful to use a webhook instead of your existing integrations for this reason, because as you saw, it did take a few seconds. So you want to ensure that you're not waiting on your website to do these calculations before it actually sends that email, just in case someone navigates away from the page and it doesn't get sent correctly. So what I actually did in my case was I created another webhook. Now this might be a little bit confusing, but essentially the way that I've done it is that one webhook triggers the other. Now this is the main webhook of my website. Okay, so in this example, this feisty agency form example here, what I have connected this form to is actually this webhook. And this, if you take out these three middle modules, all this is really doing, excluding the categorization, is taking the webhook data and then it's going to send an email. So I'll show you that now. If I run this module only and I type in my email and I click generate now, you can see that that just hit and I got that information. So I'm going to wait for that. I'm going to go back so I can do it again. And yes, so we got that information, right? So what we actually need now is to pass in this URL into the other scenario that we created, because obviously that's the one that's going to be figuring out the industry. So we needed to do a little bit of gymnastics on this one to take away the domain from the whole email. So what I did was I created a text parser. Again, you just need to add module and then do text parser, match pattern. In there, we've got this specific pattern. It's just the @ symbol, bracket, dot, star, bracket. And this is what's called a regular expression, which is basically a notation to figure out how to match a string or a piece of text. So the input piece of text is that email that came from the form, and it's going to match essentially everything after the @ symbol, which is going to be obviously the domain. Next, it's going to hook. It's going to take the webhook from the other scenario that we created prior, and it's going to add in the URL, which is obviously the domain. Next, it's going to take that response, which is this, and all we need from that is this, the text. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the data, because what I actually found in Make is that when it returned the data, instead of providing it like this, it would just provide it as some random computer data, like raw format data. So I actually needed to do toString, and to do that, you just need to click on here, and then you need to find the toString, which is available in the text and binary functions toString. And within the brackets, you can then add the data, which is the response here. And you can see the example here. So that's converting it back into essentially this text. Okay. So when we're doing that, it's now we're going to have that JSON data. And now we're going to send the full email. So I'll show you that now. This is the email. This is just literally just a lead form, and it will send an email to my own inbox with all the information on the form. And you can see that I've got from, email, process, and industry. Now, this could very well be a connection to HubSpot. It could be anything really, any way that you want to pass that information into your business. However, in this case, we're keeping it simple and we're just using it as an email. So you can see, this is directly from that form that's being sent through the website. And the final piece is the industry, which was created with our scenario. So I'll show you this all working now. If I click run once, go in here, I do tester, and I do will@feistyagency.com. We click generate now, and let's watch this happen. Goes through, doing the request to the other make scenario now. It's figuring out that industry, and like I said, it is going to take a few seconds. That's why it makes sense to keep all the information in one place so we don't lose anything. And we can see that now that's successfully sent that email. And now we just need to wait for that lead to come through, and we can see it here. And we can see that we have SaaS. as our industry, which I would say is correct based on the business that I'm running. So there you go. Obviously, like I said, you can change this and alter it however you'd like, but this is going to be the first step in your journey to automating a lead qualification process. And when you have a sales team of multiple people, maybe some of them are going to be specialized to certain industries. So, at this next step, it makes it really easy to figure out which leads are going to be most relevant to which salespeople and which leads are not going to be relevant at all. Obviously, if it was an industry which your business did not cater for, you would know at that point to completely disregard it. However, we know that in this case, software as a service would be relevant to our example industry. Therefore, we know that it's a high quality lead. Now, if you'd like any more information or ask any questions regarding this, please let me know. You can always email my email here and I'll get back to you. Thanks so much.